over the last 5-6 years, social media has really risen. And these are, I'm not sure you're familiar with all these logos, but you basically have all of these guys have more than 50 million users, right? You have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have Pinterest, you have Snapchat. All of these guys are driving a lot of traffic. And again, if you're a media company and you don't understand how you get into these platforms and understand how your content lives there, then you're going to have a difficult time. What do we do to kind of tap into this? For us, it's all about data. So what we realized early on was that if we don't understand these shifts, if we don't understand how consumers are using media and how they're going on to other platforms and using our media, then we're going to be in trouble. So we started to build our tools so we can track everything that goes on our platform, but also on other people's platforms. This is an example. 5 p.m., we launch a story. It has a headline. This is the curve, 9 a.m. in the morning. Not a lot of people have read it. Something is wrong with the story. Because of data, we've actually tested that it was the wrong headline. Changing the headline could be the difference between, having 100,000 looking at the same story to having 2.6 million looking at the same story. So data suddenly becomes important because data across all these platforms allows you to drive traffic in a whole new way to your content. And at the end of the day, you had a journalist create this story, so obviously it's a big difference whether 100,000 are looking at it or 2.6 million are looking at it. So data suddenly becomes the underlying source for information that allows you to take informed decision. Coming back to the shift to mobile, as I said, not only has the traffic shifted from different sources, also the devices has shifted. And suddenly, for a long time, we talked about desktop being the first screen. Desktop is no longer the first screen. Now the first screen is actually the mobile phone. The technology, the power of the mobile phone has allowed it to kind of really rise in importance. And now across big media sites, that's the left-hand side, the majority of the traffic is coming to them via mobile devices. The same for us on HuffPost. The majority of our traffic is now coming to us via mobile devices. Again, if you think about it for a second, there's a lot of people, a lot of traditional publishers that have had a huge problem transitioning their business from a print business to a desktop business. And now, actually there's a new change. Suddenly, it's not a desktop business, it's actually a mobile business, because this number will only grow. And it's actually a very different thing to be able to serve up communication, content, media stories on a mobile than it is on a desktop. People will think, just like when things changed from print to desktop, they will think that actually it's the same thing. That's the biggest mistake the traditional players made in media. They thought they could just take the newspaper and put it on the desktop. It never worked, and that's why companies like Huffington Post had a chance to get into the market. The same thing now. If we're not careful thinking about what this shift means, then someone else will come in and eat our lunch. So we pay a lot of attention to how is media consumed on the mobile as this shift is happening, and so should everyone else that's in this business. As I said, these guys are changing the world we live in. And, we talk about our age demographic, and, that we're pretty conservative. I even will admit that I enjoy having a printed newspaper in my hand now and then. But the young generation, the people that are growing up with these social platforms, are actually 100% mobile. If you take a site like Snapchat, which is, targeted to the millennial audience, 100% of what's happening there is mobile. So if you don't have a strategy for that, you're not going to talk to that audience. And obviously, suddenly going from text to video is a huge shift as well. So if it wasn't already enough, all the things I've talked about, then suddenly you also have to deal with this. Because over the last couple of years, what's happened online is that video has really exploded. So online video consumption has had a 40% growth each year over the last 5 years. And as you can see right now, that is the format that people are spending the most time on right now when they log on to the internet. So again, if I'm a media company and I haven't thought about, okay, perhaps I should have some videos on my site that tells my stories, then at this point in time, I'm going to be in trouble because I'm already behind if I haven't looked at this curve over time.
But a lot of the, among the audience today are in different kinds of business, like aviation, commercial, whatever, accounting. What do you think is important for all of us to remember when it comes to the future consumer with this in mind?
No, I think no matter what business you're in, it's important to understand what is the potential the technology is unlocking and how are the consumers, the users, using it, right? And I think if we hadn't paid a lot of attention to that, we wouldn't have been able to build the business that we've built, right? And I think it goes for all businesses at the end of the day. Some of the, as we jokingly saw here, some of the consumers are much more advanced than we are. And I think those are the ones that we need to pay attention to and understand. I think right now, if we talk about media in general or media in Denmark, there are people on YouTube right now that you and I haven't heard about that have millions of followers, right? So the new generation are watching, they're growing up with a totally different media reality than the media reality you and I grew up with, because we probably still watch the TV or when we want to see news or something else. And they're doing something totally different. And I think that is quite important to understand, because they're the consumers of the future, right? And if we don't understand kind of how they consume and use technology, then we're probably not going to be in business in 10 years' time.